Wuhan scientist would welcome visit probing lab leak theory. The surprise statement from Professor Shi Zhengli comes as a World Health Organization team prepares to travel to Wuhan next month to begin its investigation into the origins of COVID-19. Those 3 deaths are now at the center of a major scientific controversy about the origins of the virus and the question of whether it came from nature, or from a laboratory. It has been led by Professor Shi Zhengli from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV. Professor Shi won international acclaim for her discovery that the illness known as SARS, which killed more than 700 people in 2003, was caused by a virus that probably came from a species of bat in a Yunnan cave. Ever since, Professor Shi, often referred to as China's Batwoman, has been in the vanguard of a project to try to predict and prevent further such outbreaks. By trapping bats, taking fecal samples from them, and then carrying those samples back to the lab in Wuhan, 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 miles, away, the team behind the project has identified hundreds of new bat coronaviruses. But the fact that Wuhan is now home to the world's leading coronavirus research facility, as well as the first city to be ravaged by a pandemic outbreak of a deadly new one, has fueled suspicion that the two things are connected. The Chinese government, the WIV, and Professor Shi have all angrily dismissed the allegation of a virus leak from the Wuhan lab. But with scientists appointed by the World Health Organization, WHO, scheduled to visit Wuhan in January for an inquiry into the origin of the pandemic, Professor Shi, who has given few interviews since the pandemic began, answered a number of BBC questions by email. "I have communicated with the WHO experts twice," she wrote, when asked if an investigation might help rule out a lab leak and end the speculation. "I have personally and clearly expressed that I would welcome them to visit the WIV," she said. To a follow-up question about whether that would include a formal investigation with access to the WIV's experimental data and laboratory records, Professor Shi said, "I would personally welcome any form of visit based on an open, transparent, trusting, reliable and reasonable dialogue." The BBC subsequently received a call from the WIV's press office, saying that Professor Shi was speaking in a personal capacity and her answers had not been approved by the WIV. Many scientists believe that by far the most likely scenario is that SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, jumped naturally from bats to humans, possibly via an intermediary species. And despite Professor Shi's offer, for now there appears to be little chance of the WHO inquiry looking into the lab leak theory. The terms of reference for the WHO inquiry make no mention of the theory, and some members of the 10-person team have all but ruled it out. Peter Daszak, a British zoologist, has been chosen as part of the team because of his leading role in a multi-million-dollar, international project to sample wild viruses. It has involved close collaboration with Professor Shi Zhengli in her mass sampling of bats in China, and Dr. Daszak previously called the lab leak theory a conspiracy theory and pure baloney. "I've yet to see any evidence at all of a lab leak or a lab involvement in this outbreak," he said. Asked about seeking access to the Wuhan lab to rule the lab leak theory out, he said, "That's not my job to do that." One focus of the inquiry will be a market in Wuhan which was known to be trading in wildlife and was linked to a number of early cases, though the Chinese authorities appear to have already discounted it as a source of the virus. Dr. Daszak said the WHO team would look at those clusters of cases, look at the contacts, look at where the animals in the market have come from and see where that takes us. The deaths of the 3 Tongguan workers following exposure to a mineshaft full of bats raised suspicions that they'd succumbed to a bat coronavirus. It was exactly the kind of animal-to-human spillover that was driving the WIV to sample and test bats in Yunnan. It is no surprise then that, following those deaths, the WIV scientists began sampling bats in the Tongguan mineshaft in earnest, making multiple visits over the next 3 years and detecting 293 coronaviruses. In January this year, Professor Shi Zhengli became one of the first people in the world to sequence SARS-CoV-2, which was already spreading rapidly through the streets and homes of her city. She then compared the long string of letters representing the virus's unique genetic code with the extensive library of other viruses collected and stored over the years. And she discovered that her database contained the closest known relative of SARS-CoV-2. Rat13 is a virus whose name has been derived from the bat it was extracted from, Rhinolophus affinis, Ra, the place it was found, Tongguan, DG, and the year it was identified, 2013. There have been many well-documented cases of viruses leaking from labs. The first SARS virus, for example, leaked twice from the National Institute of Virology in Beijing in 2004, long after the outbreak had been brought under control. The practice of genetically manipulating viruses is also not new, allowing scientists to make them more infectious or more deadly, so they can assess the threat and, perhaps, develop treatments or vaccines. And from the moment it was isolated and sequenced, scientists have been struck by the remarkable ability of SARS-CoV-2 to infect humans. In what has become the definitive paper ruling out the possibility of a lab leak, Rat13 has a starring role. Published in March in the magazine Nature Medicine, it suggests that if there had been a leak, Professor Shi Zhengli would have found a much closer match in her database than Rat13. SARS-CoV-2, the authors concluded, was likely to have gained its unique efficiency through a long, undetected period of circulation in humans or animals of a natural and milder precursor virus that eventually evolved into the potent, deadly form first detected in Wuhan in 2019. He is certain that China has already conducted thorough searches for evidence of precursor viruses and stored human samples in hospitals and in animal populations.